Hey friends, Harvey Keene Properties, West Valley real estate agent. Today is the 21st of January, the day after the inauguration. And it seemed last night in the futures trading market for the bond market, the 10-year treasury yield was down as much as 7 basis points. So it kind of looked like we were going to see a drop in interest rates today. And in today's bond market trading, they finished the day down a little bit, but the 30-year fixed rate conventional mortgage didn't move at all. So it basically remained the same as what it was Friday when the markets closed. But the topic of today's video, I want to talk about, in a lot of my recent conversations the last couple of weeks, there's I've been asked a lot about what do I think about the California wildfires and how it might affect our market here in the Phoenix metro real estate market. And I've had some people tell me that, oh, we're going to get a lot of people moving here from California because of the fires, and maybe you got to remember we already have a lot of people coming from California for one reason or another. And I think obviously we're going to keep getting incoming residents from California. But it seems to be that a perception is that a lot of these people who were directly affected by the California wildfires, they're just gonna move here. They lost their home and they're gonna rebuild real quick and move to Phoenix or whatever. Somehow they're gonna end up here. And I do have a couple thoughts on that, and I do have a couple thoughts on how our market might be impacted. Not immediately, but let's talk about the wildfires. So, like State Farm, just State Farm alone, they non-renewed last year like 70,000 fire hazard policies for homeowners insurance. And they did that because, and you can't blame State Farm, and I'll explain why. There's a lot of people blaming State Farm. It's they're greedy and they screwed their customers and all this, but you got to think about it. You got to think about why. Kind of like walk back a few steps and kind of take a look at it from the outside. So, like almost a decade ago, I think it was, California, so here in Arizona, we have wildland brush management, like in the forests. We have controlled burns, and they do a lot of wildland management to mitigate forest fires. And in California, they stopped doing that nearly a decade ago. They stopped clearing dead underbrush. Like the Los Angeles area, they actually have a fire season. So it's just a matter of fact that every year they have fires. And so nearly a decade ago, they stopped clearing underbrush in these areas. And therefore, and the reason they did it was environmental. Like, oh, we don't want to hurt the wildlife that lives in there. And, controlled burns causes man-made climate change and all this. And whatever. Politics aside, they had nearly 10 years of fuel that is just sitting there ready to burn. And so what is insurance based on? Insurance is based on risk. That's what your premiums are based on. That's what your policies are based on. And like, for example, if you're, let's say you're a good driver and you have a squeaky clean driving record, and today you leave the house to go to the store and you're distracted, you're looking at your phone and you blow through a red light and you cause an accident. And everybody's okay, nobody's harmed, nobody's killed, but you're at fault for doing something stupid. Well, what's going to happen to your insurance premium for your auto coverage? It's going to go up because now you're considered a high risk driver. They're likely not going to cancel your policy unless you do something totally egregious, but now you're a high risk driver and your policy premium's going up. And it's probably going to go up for a long time, if not indefinitely. So the same goes with homeowners insurance coverage. So a lot of these companies, they did what they call actuarial studies in the last couple of years. Actuarial studies are basically like risk analysis. So what areas of the country are the highest risk for flood, highest risk for earthquakes, highest risk for hurricanes, highest risk for wildfires? And that area of Western LA was deemed to be like the riskiest fire hazard area in the country. And so as a consequence, like, okay, what needs to happen to compensate for that risk? So if there's a wildfire, who's going to pay those claims? It's going to be the insurance companies. Well, California a few years back made it illegal. They made regulations that they passed a law that made it illegal for insurers to modify coverage premiums upwards based on risk. So now that they know that this is the highest risk in the entire country for fire hazards, based on California's regulations of not clearing this underbrush, fuel for fires, with the new law that prohibited them from increasing premiums to compensate for risk, they had no other choice than to non-renew fire policies. Like, what are they going to do? If they remained in business, these 70,000 policies, this is just State Farm. Like, there's other insurance companies that opted to non-renew fire policies. This is just State Farm, 70,000 in California, I think it was. So State Farm is my insurance carrier, and I've been very happy with them. I've had them for over 20 years, home and auto. They've always been there for me. My premiums are good. My coverage is good. Anytime I had a claim, like I had an auto claim a couple times, they were like on top of it. Super happy customer here. But they have a responsibility not only to earn a profit, right? Because they're a business, they're not a charity. They also have a responsibility to remain in business for the rest of their customer base around the country. So they had no other option than to non-renew these fire policies in California. And who do you blame? You can't blame State Farm. They had no other option. You have to blame the government of California, who, like, by the way, is like, if you want an example of big government and like the consequences thereby, look no further than California. They're like the largest state government in the country, and look at California and look look at what a disaster that state is. So now going on, these people that lost everything, a lot of them don't have insurance to cover the cost to rebuild their home. So what are they going to do? Like, what options do they have? A lot of those folks too, those homes, a lot of them are paid for because they've been inherited. Like, some of those homes that those people were living in that they lost were bought, 1, 2, 3 decades ago. And, maybe they were bought for like $300,000 and 80s or 90s or whatever, and it's been in the family ever since. And that's like a big portion of their net their net worth is in their home. And so now let's just say that it's uninsured, and they don't have an insurance to file a claim with to have it rebuilt. Like, what are these people going to do? Well, the value of the land is like, well, whatever the value of the land is, if they're going to sell it to a developer, which a lot of them probably will end up doing, it's the value of the land minus the cost of the cleanup of whatever's left after the charred remains of their homes. You got to think too, like, okay, well, that's a hazmat situation, because you have a lot of the house that burnt down, sure, like it's lumber, but you also have a lot of like plastics and other materials that are burnt, and so that has to be cleaned up. So there's a cost to that. So it's land value minus the cost of cleanup and remediation. Now you got to think of this too, like, okay, so let's say these people don't sell the land minus the cost of cleanup, and let's say they want to rebuild. Or let's say some of these people did have insurance policies and they're going to file a claim. Well, the cost, the time to rebuild in California is extensive, because they have a lot of burdensome regulation on building in California, because getting permits. There's a lot of environmental regulations on building there, and the time to get permits approved is pretty extensive. And so now you have a lot of people that are going through the permitting process all at the same time. Like, the overhead that's going to be involved in that is like substantial. So what's that time frame going to look like? So I don't know that people that are direct, unless they're like extremely wealthy, and can take on that cost, remotely. Let's say they move here and like they can just hire somebody to oversee whatever they got to do to rebuild over there before they sell. Like, before those people are going to be in a position to move to Arizona, if they have to sell there and if they have to rebuild first, I mean, it's going to be like a long time, years. So I don't think in the short or medium term, I don't think we're going to see a lot of that type of migration here. Now, what we might see, I think, accelerated, people who are already maybe thinking of leaving California because of cost of living, government, taxes, regulation, just all of the stuff that comes with being a California resident. We might see some of those people like just finally pull the trigger. A lot of those people need to sell homes there, and I don't know what those fires are going to do to the market there, like for those homes that were not affected. Like, maybe it's going to take them a while to sell that house in order for them to buy a house here. Maybe some of them don't need to sell a house to buy a house here. Maybe they can buy a house here and then sell later, and whatever it takes. Here's where I think that we're going to see a little bit of some market action here as a consequence to the fires in California. So what's it going to take to rebuild? Obviously, it's going to take time, but it's going to take labor and materials, and everything in terms of the economy is based on supply and demand, right? So who controls, like, who gets the lion's share of the market here in Arizona lately, and kind of controls things, is the builders, because the builders, what they've been doing is they've been paying a lot of concessions and incentives to buyers to buy their inventory. Builders are doing a lot of spec homes, so they'll start a home and they'll spec it out and they'll market it as a quick move-in home. And I'm getting a lot of notifications on my phone, so let me put it on Do Not Disturb. Okay. So they're building all these spec homes and marketing them as quick move-in homes. And, obviously it takes labor and materials to do that. Well, a lot of the labor here in Arizona working for these, builders, tract home builders, I suspect that a lot of them will probably migrate to California and chase the jobs and chase the money, because now they're going to be rebuilding a little bit higher end homes in like the Pacific Palisades area, and whatnot. Probably a lot of industrial, commercial, whatever. So I think a lot of the labor might just chase the labor, chase the job into California. But two, the materials, a lot of lumber, a lot of, flooring, roof tiles, windows, paint, whatever, you name it. I think that's going to create a little bit of a supply and demand sort of predicament on the availability of materials here in Arizona for our builders to build these spec homes. So, as I've been predicting for a while, like 2025, we're going to see an uptick in demand from buyers here in Arizona for a number of reasons. Probably rates are going to come down a little bit, and I think that's going to create a little bit of demand. But we got 3 years of pent up demand in this market, so I think we're going to see an uptick in demand in the Phoenix metro market for a number of reasons. And now, builders, I think what's going to happen is the constraints in supply and demand for materials and labor here, I think that's going to affect their ability to crank out these spec homes. And, the builders, so we sold a house recently in Buckeye. The builder, they made it very, very enticing for the buyer to buy there. Because not only were they paying all the buyer's closing costs, they were also buying down the interest rate. I think at the time the prevailing rate was like 7%, and they bought this buyer's rate down to like 5%. I think it was like 4.99 or something. Like that's a significant incentive, right? And so, but if the builders are no longer able to crank out the volume of spec homes that they had and the new home starts, I don't think there's going to be the inventory to satisfy that demand, and that demand I think will migrate into the resale market. And so I think a lot of current homeowners that are reselling their homes, I think they're going to benefit from the uptick in demand because of the constraint in supply on the new home market for spec homes. Further, I think that what's already commonplace in the resale market is the sellers, I think, mostly have been resigned to the fact that if I'm going to sell my house, I need to understand prices have come down a little bit. I need to be competitively priced. I need to have my house market worthy, meaning it needs to be in good shape, needs to be clean, needs to show well. Sellers also need to be open to providing concessions to the buyer to pay for their closing costs and interest rate buy downs. But I think what we're going to start seeing is a lot of these offers coming over on these resale homes, they're going to be asking for a lot of concessions to pick up the slack from, the builders, what they were offering. I think buyers are going to try to get the resale sellers to sort of mimic what the builders were offering. That's just my guess. I don't know. But I do believe that maybe we don't see directly like a major increase in demand directly from migration from California here. But I think indirectly we'll probably see it just due to labor and materials and new builds slowing down, and that's going to cause the resale market to pick up. But anyway, that's just my guess. I think I covered everything I wanted to cover. If you have any questions, hit me up, drop me a comment, or if you think I left anything out, let me know. If you have any needs of a real estate agent, thinking about buying a home, selling a home, want to know what your house is worth, want to talk strategy, give me a shout. 602-295-0890. Once again, Harvey Keene, Keene Properties, West Valley Real Estate Agent. Thank you.